Well, so we have been in this study, and as we have been going through the scriptures, one book of the Bible at a time, we've come through the books of the history, we've come through books of prophets, and we finished up last week our last major prophet, and now we're going to enter into our very first minor prophet. It's not that one is bigger than the other, it's just one was revealed, God revealed more through that for different prophets, and so if they revealed more information, then we in our modern day call them major prophets, minor prophets, but they were all voices, messengers from God. And all of them had something to say that was very important, and so I think it's just another lesson for us to learn that you and I may not think that we have a huge impact on the world around us, but yet God can use you to change the world. You might have impact on one person, but that one person has impact on thousands. And where did it start? With you. And so it's not about being a major prophet, minor prophet, a big person or person with a big platform, person with a small platform, maybe just someone who just shares their faith or shares spiritual conversations on a daily basis, and maybe you just happen to have one this week. God can use you. So here we are in Hosea, and of course we've looked at the Old Testament prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, got through a bunch of those there. And then today, we look at Hosea. And Hosea kind of has this storyline. It's kind of an interesting book because there's a parallel here that I often use when I'm in my marriage counseling with people. But you'll see it. It'll be very clear. I'm not going to go into that side of things today as I focus just on the book. Now, over the last several weeks, we've been kind of hovering over... we've been hovering over the southern kingdom. We've been focusing on them with the Babylonian captivity, where Jerusalem falls and Judah falls and are taken into captivity. And a lot of the prophets that we looked at were in one of those waves taken into captivity. But that is not the case for Hosea. In fact, he was in the northern kingdom. We haven't really looked at the captivity of the northern kingdom that much, but when the kingdom split, it was split into two different kingdoms: the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. And what you had was two entirely different rulers then at this point. And because there's different rulers, they're going in different directions. In fact, when Israel falls, northern kingdom of Israel in the north, when that kingdom falls, Judah is still remaining faithful. In fact, in Hosea, God even refers to Judah as still holding firm. Now, if you think about last week, we were looking at how Judah has not held firm, but that's because that's that specific kingdom, all right? And so we kind of have to go backwards a little bit in time as we look at this. And so let's see if we can do a history lesson really quick. Jeremiah chapter 3, verse 6. The Bible says this: "The Lord said also to me in the days of Josiah the king, have you seen what backsliding Israel has done? She has gone up on every mountain high and under every tree, and there played the harlot. And I said, after she had done all these things, return to me, but she did not return. And her treacherous sister Judah saw it." Treacherous sister Judah. Ooh, those are words. "Then I saw that for all the causes which backsliding Israel had committed adultery, I had put her away and given her a certificate of divorce. Yet her treacherous sister Judah did not fear, but went and played the harlot also. And it came to pass through her casual harlotry that she defiled the land and committed adultery with stones and trees. And yet for all this, her treacherous sister Judah has not turned to me with her whole heart, but in pretense, says the Lord." So here's what's happening. We've been focusing on the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah. And as God is speaking through the prophet Jeremiah to the king of Judah, he's like, you're a treacherous person. You saw the fall of Israel, the northern kingdom, but you didn't do anything about it. And because you didn't do anything about it, you just kept going down this path. And so God really looked at Judah from a position of, hey, what is your problem? Why did you not learn from this? Well, so we have to have kind of a little history lesson. So let's see if we can figure this out. After the death of David's son Solomon, the next heir to the throne was Solomon's son Rehoboam, okay? And he chose not to listen to wise counsel. Have you ever been there? Like you have two people giving you wise counsel, like they're both people giving you counsel. One person tells you something you want to hear, and another person gives you the wise counsel. And we chose to listen to the non-wise counsel because it's our friend. It may be a person we like to be around, whatever it might be. And that was actually the case with Rehoboam. His friends gave him counsel instead of him listening to the wise men of the kingdom. And so because of that, a division arose. And so Rehoboam, he chose to listen to unwise counsel, which caused a great division in the nation. And those upset with the new king, they chose the outcast Jeroboam as a representative to go and talk to Rehoboam. I know there's a lot of boams in this passage. Jeroboam's the outcast. The king, Solomon, tried to kill him. He actually went to Egypt. Once he dies, he comes back from Egypt. The reason he had to be an outcast is because the prophet of God came to him and says, listen, the kingdom is not going in a good direction. If you promise to keep the kingdom away from idolatry, I'll make you king. Well, then the king, Solomon, finds out and tries to kill him. How dare you be a challenge to my throne? And so he runs over to Egypt, and he hides there. And after Solomon's death, now Rehoboam, his son's in charge, and he comes back because the king is no longer alive. He's hoping that enough time has passed that the Rehoboam's not going to try to kill him. So 10 northern tribes, they ask Jeroboam to represent them to Rehoboam. And it was over taxes. The taxes were too high. The people could not survive. And so it's, hey, listen, you're being too hard on your people. We make it easier. But the new king Rehoboam didn't listen. And because of that, the 10 tribes chose to break off and follow and make Jeroboam their king. So only 2 tribes remained in the southern kingdom of Judah, under the lineage of David. Remember, God promised David that he would have an heir that would sit on the throne. And so we now have 2 kingdoms. And as we looked at different prophets, it's been a little hard to kind of keep them all separate. But it's important that you understand that there were 2 different captivities that took place. The Babylonian captivity was the captivity of the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah. And the northern kingdom involved a nation called Assyria. So we have the Assyrian captivity. Isaiah chapter 11, verse 12 says, he will set up a banner for the nations, and will assemble the outcasts of Israel and gather together dispersed of Judah from the 4 corners of the earth. And so we have 2 different captivities. We have the Assyrian captivity, we have the Babylonian captivity. But in Isaiah chapter 11, God promises to bring them all back together from the different captivities, all different corners of the earth, bring them back together to reunite them there in the promised land. Hosea was a prophet to the northern kingdom, not the southern kingdom, the northern kingdom. He was a prophet to the 10 tribes under the Assyrian captivity. So let's see what Hosea has for God's people. There was a king that rose up, Jeroboam the second. So this would not be the first Jeroboam king. This would be the second Jeroboam king. And according to scriptures, he was a very evil guy. He was horrible. I'm not going to be able to sit here very long. Sorry. I'm trying to move much. Some of you guys know I messed my shoulder up this week and it's not working. So, yay. But I'm on the painkillers, which is awesome. It's causing me to speak slower. We'll see about that. The first 3 chapters of Hosea kind of gives us the themes of the book. So in a sense, you could read chapters 1, 2, and 3 and know what the rest of the book's going to be about. Okay? Hosea chapter 1, verse 2. When the Lord began to speak to Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, go take yourself a wife of harlotry and children of harlotry. For the land has committed great harlotry by departing from the Lord. Are there any kids in here? My daughter, she's fine. Go pick a woman to be your wife. She's to be a harlot. Do I have to describe what a harlot is? Okay, good. Whew. God is going to draw a parallel between the faithfulness of this harlot wife and God's chosen people, Israel. They could choose to remain faithful to the one true God, or they can choose to run around with a whole bunch of idols. So within these first 3 chapters, Hosea basically, he introduces the themes, and here they are. They are Israel's rebellion, the consequences of that rebellion, and most importantly, how Israel's sin and rebellion will be overcome by God's love and mercy. Listen, rebellion against God does not end well for anyone. Here's the great news. God loves us. God has mercy toward us. And God will do the same for the children of Israel. The prophet, he marries a harlot, Gomer. And in the pages of Hosea, their marriage becomes a picture of Israel's unfaithfulness. As Israel's constantly turning to other gods, his wife Gomer continually runs to other men. Hosea chapter 1, verse 3. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim. I don't know if I said that right. And she conceived and bore him a son. Then the Lord said to him, call his name Jezreel. For in a little while I will avenge the bloodshed of Jezreel on the house of Judah and bring an end to the kingdom of Israel, the house of Israel. And it shall come to pass in that day that I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. Now, Hosea will have 3 children with his wife. He is asked to name every one of them by a specific name representing something very important. So this first child was named to remind Israel of a past massacre by the king Jehu. He's like, hey, remember this massacre where all these people in Israel were killed and destroyed? We're going to name him after that massacre. Because it's not going to end well in rebellion against God. Well, then, they had a daughter, and they named their daughter Lo Ramah. Her name means not pitied or no mercy. Again, this is God's warning. God is going to withdraw his mercy. You will be judged for your actions. Their third child was named Lo Ami, meaning not my people. Think on that for a moment. These are God's chosen people. But this third child says, hey, you want to know what the worst possible consequence of your sin is? I'll reject you. Now, luckily, by the end of the book of the Bible, or by the end of the book, Hosea, God says, I'm not going to reject you. I will hold you and bring you back. So there is hope. Hosea chapter 2, verse 23, then I will sow her for myself in the earth, and I will have mercy on her who had not obtained mercy. Then I will say to those who were not my people, you are my people. And they shall say, you are my God. So there is hope, because toward the end of the book, he says, listen, there will come a time where they will realize that they want to be God's people, and they will turn back to God, and God will say, you are now my people. So there's hope. In the story of Hosea and Gomer, the harlot pursues the lovers outside of the marriage covenant regularly. Yet instead of offering a bill of divorcement, Hosea is instructed to respond as God responds to Israel, take her back. Because that is the love of God toward us. Can you kind of see where I can use this passage in marriage counseling? Man, it doesn't matter what you do in that marriage relationship. You need to fight for it. Fight for it. It's so worth it. Show the love of God. Show the love of God that God had for his children of Israel. When they weren't faithful, guess what? God still took them back. It's a picture of God's love and mercy and how God promised to overcome their sin with his goodness, his love, his mercy. Hosea chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. Then the Lord said to me, go again, love a woman who is loved by a lover and is committing adultery. I know that she's a harlot, but you still got to be okay with this. Go take her back. A lover and is committing adultery, just like the love of the Lord for the children of Israel. Did you get that? Go take her back. I want you to demonstrate the love of God toward Israel. Love her anyways. Yeah, she's running around as a harlot. Yeah, Israel's taking on and chasing after other gods. But like God continues to love Israel, you need to continue to love Gomer. So I brought her for, let's see here. And look to verse 2. I'll just start in verse 2. So he goes out, he finds Gomer, and here's what he does. So I bought her for myself for 15 shekels of silver and 1.5 homers of barley. This is his wife, and he is forced to go into where she is being used, and he buys her back and takes her home. I want you to think on that. He didn't just go say, hey, wife, it's time for you to come home. He had to pay for her and bring her back. You know, sometimes in our relationships, as married couples, it's costly to work toward the right end. But we need to be willing to do whatever it takes. God, through this story between Hosea and Gomer, is saying, as your God, I am willing to do what it takes to rescue you out of this, to bring you back to myself. So I bought her for for myself for 15 shekels of silver and one half homers of barley. And I said to her, you shall stay with me many days. You shall not play the harlot, nor shall you have a man. So too will I be towards you. For the children of Israel shall abide many days without a king or prince, without sacrifice or sacrifice pillar, without an ephod or teraphim. Afterward, the children of Israel shall return and seek the Lord their God and David their king. They shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days. Did you get that? Here's what he says. There's going to come a time, there's going to be a period of time where you're not going to be able to worship the way that you normally would worship because you're going to be in captivity. And in captivity, you cannot worship as you were instructed to worship as my children. You won't have an ephod. You won't have these places to come and bring sacrifices. You don't get to do any of that. But one day I will bring you back. I will establish you. I will allow you to continue forward and to worship me the way you're supposed to worship me. I will restore you. Chapters 4 through 14. Covers God's accusations toward Israel and its unfaithfulness and his warnings. Now remember, in chapters 1 through 3, he gives us all of the themes. In chapters 4 through 14, he begins to unpack those themes and goes deeper in them. And so if you think about it this way, you know, you got Gomer run around and she's being a harlot and she's taking on other men and she's doing all this other stuff. Just as Israel's run around taking on other gods and worshiping other gods and encouraging other things that do not honor God into their homes, into their lives. And so God levies many charges against the children of Israel, just as Hosea could levy many charges against his wife. By the way, what is the consequence of adultery in their time? Yeah. So chapter 4, there is a cause and effect of Israel's unfaithfulness. Sin is not isolated. Sin impacts those around us and can leave have lasting consequences. Listen, you and I, in our current day and age, we can choose to honor God with our lives and honor God with our decisions and choose to follow after God, or we can choose to chase after self. In recovery process, we talk about this, how there really are only two gods. The one and true God and the God of self. The God of self chooses to do their own thing and to medicate and do all these other things that we want to do. It's not a big deal. It's only one time. It's only a little bit. And so self, we're constantly feeding self, and that doesn't honor God. But yet God says, hey, would you learn to walk in the Spirit? I am holy, therefore you should be holy. How on earth can we live holy lives? By learning to walk in the Spirit. Choosing God over self. Choosing God over the world. And so God will levy many different accusations toward Israel. And by the way, because that sin is not isolated, it's not like you got one family here who worships God only, and you got a family over here who worships idols and also God. What happens is the whole nation will be judged because of this idolatry. And so sin impacts those around us, and it brings lasting consequences. Hosea chapter 4, verse 1, hear the word of the Lord, you children of Israel, for the Lord brings a charge against the inhabitants of the land. There is no truth or mercy or knowledge of God in the land. By swearing and lying, killing and stealing, and committing adultery, they break all restraint with bloodshed upon bloodshed. The nation has turned out to be pretty awful. Chapter 4, verse 12. My people ask counsel from their wooden idols, and their staff informs them. It's like picking up a stick saying, what should I do today? And thinking the stick's going to talk back to us. That's how they're doing things. And their staff informs them, for their spirit of harlotry has caused them to stray, and they have played the harlot against their God. They offer sacrifices on the mountaintops and burn incense on the hills under oaks, poplars, and terebinths, because their shade is good. Therefore, their daughters commit harlotry and their brides commit adultery. The nation of Israel does not honor God. They're just living however they want to live. By the way, that's the state of many Americanized Christians today. They will come to church, they will sit in a seat, they will go home, and they will live like the rest of the world. That does not honor God. What honors God is a desire to walk with God more closely every single day of our lives. What honors God is a willingness to say, hey, you know what, there's something here that doesn't belong. Let's unpack that. Let's work on that. I want to honor God with my life. We need to wake up as a church. We are surrounded by deep darkness. And let me tell you something. You can't have both sides of the fence. If you choose God, then walk with God. If you choose the world, there will be consequences for that, just as Israel faced. It's your choice. Got to wake up, stand up, and live what God has asked you to live. You're called ambassadors, supposed to represent Jesus Christ. You can't represent Jesus Christ if you're going to be silent. You can't represent Jesus Christ if you're living like the rest of the world. You must be an ambassador for Christ. We live in a world full of darkness, just like the times of Israel here. And God levies many accusations against them, saying, listen, you're following after all kinds of wickedness. This does not honor me in any way. This does not belong. You are my children. Remove this. And if you won't remove this, there will be consequences. But I promise you this, on the other side of judgment, my judgment, the judgment of your one true God, when I finally bring you to a point where you will turn back to me, I will restore the remnant. I will call you from the four corners of the earth and bring you back to the promised land, and I will reestablish you. God doesn't give up on Israel. Remember, Israel, the picture in the story of Hosea, they're the harlot. They're running around. They're being unfaithful. And God's constantly saying, come back to me, come back to me. In fact, Hosea chapter 6, we're halfway through the book of this Bible now, or the book of Hosea now. And in chapter 6, he says, come, let us return to the Lord, for he has torn. But he will heal us. He has stricken, but he will bind us up. After 2 days, he will revive us. On the third day, he will raise us up that we may live in his sight. He's pleading with them, come back to me, come back to me. But they chose their way of wickedness to play the harlot. They would not remain faithful to God. Chapters 12 through 14, Hosea takes the reader on a history lesson to show how God has been so good to Israel. He says, hey, listen, I want you to think about what God has done for you. Hosea reminds them of how God took them out of Egypt and set them free, but yet it was crazy because just after God brought them out of Egypt, self sets back in, and they start thinking of self, and they rebelled against God. Hosea reminds them of their treachery of Jacob's lie to receive the blessing from the father. Again, self set in. Israel's rebellion in the wilderness. When they're walking around the wilderness, they constantly were rebelling against God. He reminds them of that. Again, self sets in Exodus and Numbers. Their instance of being like, their insistence on being like every other kingdom. If you remember, when they established their first king, Saul, they were supposed to be a theocracy. In a theocracy, who is in charge? God. But we want to be like all the other kingdoms. We want to be like everybody else. We want a king on the throne. And no matter how much the prophet of God tried to talk them out of it and show them this is not a good thing, you want God as your leader. You do not want a man leading you. They refused to listen to wise counsel. They refused to listen to God, and they did it their way. And by the way, had they not done it their way, they would not be in the situation they are today. Because self. They would not be in this situation where Israel is about to be judged and taken into captivity. Instead, they chose their way. They got their king, and with their man king, all kinds of bad stuff started happening. But there is hope in the book of Hosea. Hosea chapter 3, verse 5. After all of this is going to happen, afterwards the children of Israel shall return. Man, that is hope. Let me tell you something. It doesn't matter how far you've gone, how deep into the gutter you might have gotten yourself from your decisions and your choices in life. Let me tell you something. Israel went pretty deep. In Judah, they were having child sacrifice. Pretty deep. I don't know how far you've gone or what decisions you've made or where you are in your life journey, but I do know this. There is hope for you because you have a God who loves you and has great mercy towards you, just as he had great mercy toward Israel. After the children of Israel shall return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, they shall fear the Lord and his goodness all the latter days. Here's what he's saying. They will return. And when they return, they'll be blessed. Let's see some other moments of hope in this book. Chapter 11, verse 7. My people are bent on backsliding from me. Though they call to the Most High, none at all exalt him. Verse 9 now. And I will execute the fiercest of my anger. I will not again destroy Ephraim, speaking of Israel. For I am God and not man, the Holy One in your midst. And I will not come with terror. They shall walk after the Lord. Here's a declaration. Listen, when all this is done and said, they shall walk after the Lord. He will roar like a lion. When he roars, then his sons shall come trembling from the west. They shall come trembling like a bird from Egypt, like a dove from the land of Assyria. And I will let them dwell in their houses, says the Lord. Here's what he's saying. Just like Gomer, just like Hosea is supposed to accept her back and bring her back over and over and over again, God's looking at your life saying, listen, I love you. I care about you. I desire to bring you back to me, but will you come? It's your choice. And when you begin to turn your heart back to God, maybe repent of that thing that continues tripping you up. Say, God, I desperately need your help in this. Let me tell you something. That is the beginning of one of the greatest journeys of recovery you can ever experience. Because you have a God who has not forsaken you. You have a God who loves you. He cares about you. He wants to see life transformation in your life. But you've got to choose to follow and walk after him. It's your choice what God does in your life today. You can continue to choose to chase after the world. And God, like Hosea, will wait patiently to try to bring you back. But imagine Gomer saying, I refuse to go. I refuse. God says, I am holy, therefore be ye holy. Imagine saying, God, I refuse. Then I have to ask this question. Why? It doesn't end well. You have a good and loving God who desires to work in and through your life. He desires to restore that which you have lost. But will you find restoration? It requires a willingness to return to God. Hosea says, listen, one day Israel will return to God. And when they do return to God, let me tell you, God's love will overcome all their sin. So let's grab some really close life application really quick. First, Israel knew of God. Israel worshiped God alongside of all the other idols. They went through the motions worshiping God, the one true God. They went through the motions. They were where they're supposed to be. They said the right things. They presented the right sacrifices. And God's saying, I don't need any of that. They did not have a genuine relationship with God. So my challenge to you is this: make growing in a genuine relationship with God priority in your life. Make a priority over anything else. Well, I really like to do this on weekends. Great, but how are you growing with God? How are you growing your relationship with God? If that is impacting your growth, then it shouldn't be part of your life. Listen, I'm all for people taking vacations. You guys know I'll take a vacation, mainly because the deacons force me to, but it's not a problem to go and get some rest. But it is a problem to say, hey, I like this shiny thing. I'm going to make it part of my life. And oh, well, I can't do this now. I can't do this now. I can't be part of this now. And now we've made this thing in our life more important than growing our relationship with God. Do you know what we call that? If we took that thing we placed in the Old Testament, we would call that an idol. Something we've chose over God, an idol. Secondly, Israel repeatedly rebelled. They refused to learn the lesson of trusting God. They refused to obey God. They refused to remain faithful to God. So what can we learn from this? We need to be faithful to God. We need to choose to walk with God. We need to obey God and learn to trust God in all things. You know, the hardest thing in spiritual walk is trusting God. Trusting God. And we look at this world around us, it's hard to trust, isn't it? God, what are you up to? Lord Jesus, come quickly. And he is. But we have a hard time trusting God, especially in the day-to-day stuff. How many of y'all like to be in control? Come on now. How many of you are married to someone who likes to be in control? Yeah. We love to be in control, but what happens when life spins out of control? We have lost control, and it's those moments that we need to learn to say, hey, God, you've got this. I'll trust you in this. It's hard, I know, but we can trust God in this. Finally, no matter what you have done, no matter how far you have strayed away from God, no matter what your choices have caused you to do in life, understand this: God's love and mercy towards you is greater than any sin or shame. There is freedom in God. He's not going to abandon you. He's not going to force your hand. He's going to stand there and put his arm around you and say, anytime you're ready, just say the words, and I'll jump in. Because he loves you. He cares about you. He's a good and loving God.